Hello, welcome to my new series Feed Daedalus. This is episode 1.1. This series is where I take my followers' prompts or creative direction and create a themed release of music, cover art, and a audio reactive visualizer. Let's get to it. So just to recap, the way this works is I put online a Google Forms questionnaire of all of the, requesting for a creative prompt. And in this first batch 1, I got a few different prompts from different people, and the one I selected was about metamorphosis. So the exact prompt was something themed about metamorphosis, could be cool, inspired around transformative change. It's quite linked to butterfly/biological motifs, but could encapsulate any sort of transformation/change in theory. When I read this, I immediately had loads of ideas. I was thinking about, some kind of track that changes over time. Maybe there's a lot of thematically, there's a lot of change going on. Maybe in the structure, maybe in the elements that are used. I quite like the idea of thinking of, obviously metamorphosis could mean like, in the biological sense, like an insect or butterfly or whatever changing from the caterpillar stage or larva to the adult form. But I kind of wanted to take it more as like in the human way, like sort of going through change, maturing, growing up sort of thing. So I think I wanted something that felt kind of nostalgic, something that felt like you were, growing up, something that feels a bit sort of timeless or makes you feel like time is going by. That was the kind of vibe I wanted to go for. And so this just to quickly recap as well, this episode will be structured in 3 parts. The first part is talking about the music, how I came about the song. The second part will be about the cover art, and in this case I used code and my pen plotting machine to create the cover. And then the final part will be about the audio reactive visualizer. Let's kind of get to it. Okay, so I've got my final project file open in Ableton. This is the song. I just made a copy. I don't know if you can, so you can't see the top of that, doesn't matter. I'm going to start off by saying I've been learning Ableton for about a year and a half. I think I started January, February last year. So I'm by no means, an expert. I'm sure if any Ableton wizards are watching this, probably can scrutinize the hell out of this. Just take that into consideration. So the track, maybe I should start with where it started with. It started with a synth that I came up with using the wavetable. Let's see if I can dig it out. I think it was, I stored it, here's the original. I've written the original here. I just played these. First of all, what is the synth? So the synth is using a wavetable. I seem to have found. Oh, what is this? Oh yeah, I'm using one of the preset Ableton wavetables. I just drag and drop into it. It's very simple. I don't even know what. Can we play? If you should be able to get a very simple. So let me play. I'll play the chords of what I came up with. I was just sat here messing around, and I found this really simple wavetable preset. Nothing special. Filters, no filter really. This is the same. There's a poly on it. So it's pretty box standard. And then I just was playing this. Again, I was like, it's got a good feel to it. And I think it was a C major chord. I don't even know what it was. What is it? A C? No, D. Is it a D major? D major, G major chord? I'm not also very educated in music theory, so I've learnt a little bit. So we're in C major, and it's just a D and a G chord, I think. But then I took this very simple loop, this chord progression, and then I think I just messed around with it, and I came up with this kind of structure. I think all I did was I just changed the length of some of the notes. Sometimes it overlaps a little bit, and if I play this on loop, you'll get a sense of. I really like that, how it starts off as like this interval, these two notes here, and then drops with that bass. And I just, from there I was like, this is it. And then from there I just imagined like some kind of like break beaty kind of percussion, like really kind of fast paced, high energy, but also, I don't know, somehow that made me think of like very nostalgic kind of emotions. So from there, I think, yeah, I don't know what I did from that. I guess the next logical thing would be the main element, which is this. I'm just keep making sure you can see what I'm seeing. Would be this track here. Is it this track? I think it's this track. Let me just solo this. Yeah. So it would be here. Which sounds slightly different. I did some stuff to it, I suppose. What have I done? So there's a bit of an LFO on the filter. For people who don't know what that means, it just means it's oscillating like this, just to kind of give it that bouncing kind of feel to it. I also added another oscillator, so we have this first one, and then what does the second one do? Oh, it has. I think that gets used later. It's very, very. I don't know if you can even hear that. Yeah. So later it comes in. It's got this sort of glassy, higher end texture to it, which is quite nice. So that's really the main part of the song. This, and then I just made an intro, which is effectively. Why can't I? Oh. Which is just that part. Yeah. This intro part was much longer. It was like, if that's one bar, it was like, oh wait, am I doing it wrong? Yeah, it was 4 bars, sorry. It was much longer, and it just sounded like it was going on and on and on. So I shortened it to get to this. But I really liked starting with just the main element of the track, and this is basically a slight adjustment to the original MIDI programming I originally started with all the way at the bottom. So let me just play kind of the start of the track, and then maybe that'll prompt me to talk a bit more about what to talk about. Transitions to the main element. Okay, so there was I used my voice to say the word change, and I think I'll talk about that. So I thought it would be really cool to have some kind of like vocal motif of me just saying the word change throughout, and maybe, not always, but maybe that makes the track change as well. So roughly speaking, every time I say the word change, it's a drop, or some elements get added or taken away, that sort of thing. But then for later, for the third part, I also thought it would be a really good kind of audio cue for the visualizer to change as well. And I'll talk about that in my third part. But yeah, so the vocal is literally just me saying, if I just turn off this auto shift, change, it's just the word change. But I added this auto shift to it with a formant, and it change. It's got this kind of weird, kind of I don't know, robotic, futury, kind of glitchy sound to it.
Change.
And throughout the track, basically, I'm just changing that form more and more. Or, not that example, sorry.
Change.
There. And I'm adding more layers. So I said the word change a few times in my initial recording and just layered it up.
Change.
So as the song is progressing, that change element changes as well, which I thought was, you know. And I suppose the other component of the vocal, or just this kind of like little change element, is this part, and I'm really happy with this. I don't know where how I came about. I think I was just messing around, and what I did was let me recreate what I did. So I'm just making a new track here, and I'm just going to copy and paste the vocal there. Let's just put it above and colour it a different colour so we know what. So if we just focus on this track here, it's literally just the change part, right? And then I added you know what, I don't think I even added anything. I think I just added straight, just reverb.
Change.
And then I did something like, it was something like this, and then I froze this. So for those of you who don't know maybe for different people who might be watching, what I've done is I've just taken the vocal element and added the reverb, which kind of makes the sound like it's in a room with a sort of, not an echo, but it gives it that roomy feel. And now what I'm going to do is freeze and flatten the track, which basically records the sound with the plugin, so with the reverb, and then gives you an audio file. So if you watch this track here, it'll change into an audio file in a second. There you go. Now I must have done something different because I can notice I can notice something. But anyway, what you can see is here's the vocal now with that reverb, but there's this tail, and this tail basically just means it's like bit after that wasn't there before. And what that is the kind of like the reverb texture after the sound is played. So what I did was, I think I took, again, obviously you can tell that I did something else because this one looks slightly different. But I just took that, reversed it, so flipped it round to give this kind of building which is somewhat similar to what I had done before. I have no idea what I did do originally.
Change.
But anyway, so that's how I got a really nice kind of like vocal rising sound.
Change.
And then I've used that in a couple I've used that before every vocal. And then in some instances I didn't even use the vocal, like here. It's kind of like almost suggesting it's going to come, but it doesn't actually get used. So I'd say those are the main components. I do have a sub layer. So here, I don't even know if you'll be able to hear this. You probably won't. But this is just a very simple sub sine wave in the wavetable with a sub on it, and it's following like effectively like the root note of the bass line, but a bit more simple and slightly different. So it gives a bit of variation, I suppose. What else? So there's a if you've listened to the song, there's I don't even know what kind of sound it is. It's very synthy, sharp, distorted. It says synthy bell. I don't think it's a really. Oh, I've written that, but I don't think it's a bell. But I just took that from, again, this kind of chordy bass line and just changed some of the structure to it, and it created. I got this out of it. Which I quite like because it has this like, I think most of music is like a happy accidents, but this one, I made it sound in my, like, from what I can hear, I made it sort of sound kind of distorted, and I really did quite like that. If I play it by itself, it's got this kind of like really sharp, kind of pushing the edge of like distortion sound. But yeah. I suppose another thing worth talking about is the BPM. So again, for those who aren't engrossed in music to this level, I'd say the BPM is just beats per minute. So how many beats per minute? House music is like, I don't know, 120, 119 to like 126, something like that. Grime or like dubstep is like 140, D&B is like 160 plus, jungle's like 160. So it's just kind of like how fast is the, or how many beats are on per minute. I was struggling because initially I made this track at 120 and it sounded way too slow. And I just had to keep playing around with it. And what I ended up doing, and I don't even know if this is like blasphemy in like music production, but in these kind of breakdowns, I just automated the BPM to be slower. So you'll see, if you watch the number here, say at the end here, it'll drop. Oh wait, all the way to 112, or 112 I should say. And it's because initially I tried to like, so you can hear the breakdown is this part. I tried to, change it in the MIDI by like drawing out notes and stuff. And it didn't feel right. And I just realized that if I actually automate the whole BPM of the track, you get this kind of like really drawn out, like natural, I think it feels natural, build, slightly getting faster and faster. And so yeah, I quite like that, and that's how I got round, I think, the difficulties of some of the when these are like chords are just you hear them by themselves in the breakdown to make them sound kind of like drawn out in a good way. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 more things I want to talk about. So the other thing is I just randomly took, I think it was this sub MIDI, and I just was flicking through some of the presets in Ableton, and I found this plucky bass solo, and all I did was I took the bass line, scaled it down by half so it's playing like twice as fast, duplicated it and changed some of the notes, and I got this out of it. And I don't know, it just felt really nice, and I wanted to use it somewhere. So I use it twice. I have these 2 bits where it just kind of breaks down. I'll play it into this kind of like bass solo. Oh, I looped it, sorry. and I use that again here later. But to go with it, I found these two break kind of percussion bits, and I just kept fiddling around until I found a bit, a kind of configuration that just sounded nice. If I play those two together. And then all together. So that was that part. I really liked how it just goes back into the track. And then what is this? I don't even know what that is. Anyway, I don't know if other people have this problem, but when you work on a song for quite a lot of time and then it gets really complicated, or like there's a lot of elements going on, sometimes I lose track of where everything is and what's even happening sometimes. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the percussion. So originally it was just this not break, kind of like, I don't even know what you call it. What's it called? Drum break loop, yeah. So that sounded like this. Let me just do it without the... It was just that. But I didn't like that I couldn't really have control over the drums, and usually I use loops, but for this one I wanted to kind of try something, I suppose, new and push my skill set, I suppose. So what I did was I tried to recreate and tweak the drum pattern. So I have a kick like this, and then a clap layer, which is a mixture of just random clap samples, and I did some foleying, I don't know if it's called that, but I used my own clap sounds, and then I have a hi-hat. But what I noticed is like that initial kind of there was like a momentum or something to this drum loop, this break. So what I did was I decided I'm going to use it, but just like I'll EQ it. I don't know if I don't know if this signals to people who use Ableton that this is like really bad EQing, but I don't know. It just I wanted it to be like noticeable in the stereo, but like not a really strong element. I wanted my own percussion to be the sort of strong element. So I EQ'd it and then compressed it a little bit with a multiband compressor, and it sounds, you can just hear it in the background on the right. I feel like it just helps the flow. But yeah, I think, yeah, so then that's probably most of it. The only other kind of thing about it is, about this track, is the ending. So like, I quite like this, once I kind of decided on this like change component, I thought it would be good to like have the outro of just like quickly, constantly changing. So I did this. Oh wait, so it ends on. Like 2-bar segments with a gain automation at the end, just making everything go quiet. But yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else worth talking about. Also, there's one other element. So in the second, I think it's the last breakdown, there's this element. This kind of like harmonic, chordy, choiry kind of sound. And I used I don't even know what I think it was, yeah, so I used this instrument, Vaporesque pad, with this preset and then just a reverb. Can I just play this? I don't want to record it. How do I? Oh no, sorry, here. So that's what that sounds like. And then I think I took one of the chords in the main chord progression and just fixed it. And then put on the reverb, I think I just fixed the reverb or something, or just played it for quite a while and then just flattened it, frozen flattened it, and then just, that's it, it's this part. I think that's most of the song, pretty much. I don't think there's, and then the effects, there's just, what is it? It's just there's a roll like that. Then there's a, what is that? Another roll, and then there's a sweep. And then there's a spin back as well. I use late, halfway through. But apart from that, I think that's everything. There's one thing to note. So like, when I was doing the bass, this kind of chordy bass, the main element, I was struggling. I don't think I'm very good at mixing, and I mixed and mastered this myself to the best of my ability. It wasn't very. I don't think it's, maybe one day I'll outsource it, but yeah, I tried my best. One thing you can see all the plugins. There's so much. I think that's how I tried to learn. It's just like dump loads of plugins into the track and see if it sounds better or not, or just experiment. But one of the things that really helped, I think it was here. It was very subtle, but I just slightly boosted the input on the high end and then lowered the mid range on this multi-band compressor on this bass, chordy bass, and I don't know what it did. I mean, intuitively I have some idea, but probably made space in the mid range. But as soon as I did that, it sat so much better. And once I'd done that, I felt like I was in the home stretch in terms of getting it finished in the way I wanted it. But yeah, I think that's it. And then at the bottom I had a reference track. Yeah, I don't think there's much else to really talk about. I hope that, if people listen to this, they can see the sort of, or hear the theme of like metamorphosis or change. Obviously the obvious vocal cue of change is probably an indicator, but yeah, cool. Okay, so I suppose it's on to the next section. Okay, so this is section 2, where we're talking about the cover art. So you can see here's the cover art. This was made using, I can't remember if I used JavaScript or Python. I used both of those. I think I used Python in this, actually, in this version. So yeah, I used Python to come up with the SVG file. So for those who don't know, so basically I write some code that generates a path file. So this is like a type of image file, but instead of storing like pixel values, like what's happening, what colors at each pixel, it stores like lines and shapes and faces, shapes and things like that. The reason that's quite useful is things like vector graphics or graphic design. Is like if you want to scale an image and it not be sort of all pixelated and horrible, if you use a vector graphic or like a path file, you're able to do that. But the reason I need it is the path file that I create, I can send it to my pen plot machine, which will plot the file out. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to be drawing on my laptop, so I don't know how well this is going to go, but let me just kind of mark where you can see. So that's the top. Okay, cool. Let me pick a bit of a brighter pen as well. So this cover art was designed, well, how I arrived at the end, to create the cover art is like there's like 2 or 3 stages. Okay, so firstly I'm just going to quickly talk about the design itself. So I used, right, I'm back. I don't know if I edited that okay, I hope I did. I just wanted to add a picture. So this is a pen plotting design I did about a year ago, and it's one of my favourite. When I talked about this cover art, how to design it, there's a few stages to it. The first stage uses the same concept of this design, and I want to talk about it. So this design, the way it's made is in the code, and I'll draw some diagrams to help explain, but I start out with a grid of a grid of points, like a lattice, and then you can join these points with vertical lines and horizontal lines. You can think of like an Excel spreadsheet. Then what I do is, using various functions like math or trigonometry or whatever, I distort the points. So I move the points slightly by some kind of... I'll explain that part later, but I distort all the points in some kind of... with some kind of rule. And... but what I do is I preserve how the lines are connected up. So for example, if you have a row of points at the top, and I distort all the points, I then go back and draw the line with the code that connect the same points up. And that allows me to have like these wavy lines. Now, I don't know if I can make this bigger for you to see. I don't know if you can see in this recording, but this is made up of vertical blue lines and then red horizontal lines, and that is kind of key to this design that I create for the cover art. So that's the first kind of section, building up the framework to have the grid of points that get distorted, and then you draw lines connecting them all up horizontally and vertically. And the reason we need that is basically I then send it to my pen plotting machine to plot all the vertical lines at the same time and then all the horizontal lines at the same time, and then I'm able to use 2 different colors. That's how I get the color layer texture. For those of you who don't really know, have no idea what I'm talking about at this point, and not seen any of my sort of TikTok or anything, I'd implore you to go check it out. Or there's some videos on my YouTube of my pen plotting machine working. The reason I use a pen plotting machine is like there's a lot of like creative freedom, I suppose, by changing different papers and different pens and that sort of thing, and watching this ink sort of bleed together. It creates really nice effects, because I've had people ask me like, why don't you just like print it off and stuff, and it wouldn't look the same. It would look really flat and not as like vibrant and textured as this does. So that's the reason why I use the pen plotting machine. So yeah, let's get into the first kind of section, is building up this framework. So the way it works is I'll have a grid of points. I'll do, let's say, 4 points, right? So my code will create this grid of points, and it'll do it proportionally depending on the size of the canvas. So like if it's A3 or whatever, I'll do it accordingly. And let's say that the canvas height is H and the canvas width is W. That way you can kind of like write a nested for loop to iterate through and just kind of fill the canvas with a grid of points with the same density. the way you do that is like you can define the spacing between each node to be like the width divided by some kind of spacing constant, or the height divided by some spacing constant. Or is it the way around? No, that is right, I think, yeah. Okay. And then once I've got this grid of points, I then get the code to basically draw. I mean, these should be effectively straight, not wiggly, but they should be straight, right? So very simply, that is what my code is doing. So it creates a grid of points in the canvas, and connects the horizontal lines up, and then connects all the vertical lines up, and then exports that design into a CSV path file in 2 layers. So all the vertical lines are grouped together and all the horizontal lines are grouped together. So that's kind of the framework. So that's how like I said, that's the framework. That's the kind of like the workflow, if you like, the architecture behind the design. The interesting part is now, how do I actually get the design to look like the cover art you see, this like ripple effect on the left hand side going all the way to the kind of butterfly effect on the right hand side. Now let me just quickly talk about that sort of creatively instead of technically for a second. This design uses something called linear interpolation. Now linear interpolation is just a way to kind of continuously deform something from one thing to another in like a continuous linear fashion. The reason I wanted to use that is obviously because of the theme of metamorphosis and change. It'll be a good way to kind of like have this idea of change, right? Sort of visualize this idea of change. And also, a few weeks before, well actually it was in May that I've dated it, I started doing these little plots on this little pad here. And if you can see, let's kind of get that right. I don't know if it's in frame or if it's focusing. Maybe I'll edit a picture on top. But it's a linear interpolation from 2 functions. Going from here all the way to there. It slowly deforms. Let's try and... I don't think that's going to focus. But anyway, it continuously deforms. And I was thinking about just using this as the cover art, but I thought that was a bit cheating because like I'd already done this. I wanted to do everything like from fresh. So that's another kind of aspect to this, is linear interpolation, and I'm going to quickly do write some details about that. So let's pick another colour. Let's do yellow this time, and I'm just going to move. Can I move? Oh, okay. Well, let's just put this like here. Let's just say the math is going. Where's your? I don't know, highlighter. Let's do it in blue. Where's the top? There. Okay. So the idea is, how do I think about this? Think of like a number line. Say you've got a number line, and you've got a value A and a value B, and you want to continuously go from A to B in a linear fashion. Okay, so say you want to start out here and you want to go all the way over to there, right? I know this sounds very basic and very simple, but it kind of explains the point, I'd hope. There's a way you can sort of think of this sort of conceptually in like a mathematical sense. Is imagine you have a slider going from here all the way over to here, and this slider you can move back and forwards. Okay, that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to mathematically parameterize this to be able to go from A to B. Now, a way to think of it, a way to kind of formalize it is, say you have let's call a point S which represents the slider, and that's somewhere between A and B, and that's what we want to kind of calculate. How do we determine where we are on the slider? Okay. Now, we want S to be some kind of function. I'm just going to put T there for a second. And it's going to equal something that involves A and B and T. We don't quite know how or why or what it's going to look like yet, but we know that this function S of T has to involve where do we start, which is A, where do we finish, which is B, and then the sort of like T as time is like where are we on the slider. Okay? Now, T is just going to be our kind of slider, but T is going to belong, maybe I should be careful with what mathematical notation I use, but let's say T belongs, I'm writing that as T can be basically any value from 0 to 1. It's like a sliding time value between 0 and 1, right? So that's like our input. Where are we on this sliding linear scale? Now, what we want is when T is 0, we want S to be A, so we're at the beginning. And then when T goes all the way to 1, we want S to be B. And then any value between, we're some kind of proportionate way along the line from A to B. So the way we do that is, the way I think about it is like, well, what should the function look like when T is 0, and what should the function look like when T is 1? That kind of helps me think about this. And so if we have S of 0, like I said, we want it to be A, and S of 1, we want it to be B. Now I'm just going to write what the formula is, and I'll explain it in a second. So S of T is going to be A times 1 minus T plus B times T. My screen is okay, there we go. Now, what's happening is what's happening is, you can see here, this first term, if we look at it, when T is 1, that whole term is A times 1 minus 1, which is 0. So that becomes 0. And then the second term, when T is 1, B times 1 is just B. So we have, the whole thing becomes B. Now when T is 0, the first term is A times 1 minus 0, which is A times 1, which is A, plus B times 0, which is a 0. So what we have is this kind of way to parameterize going from A to B in a continuous way, where T is from 0 to 1. We can basically, you give me any T value from 0 to 1, I can tell you where we are along the line. Now that sounds like a bit kind of what's the point, right? The point is, and this is where it all fits together, is if we go back to our original grid, okay, and if you remember I told you that we're going to be distorting the points by some rule, we're actually going to be distorting the points by some function. And if we can distort the point from a function, and we pair it with this linear interpolation, we could distort it by two functions, and we just distort, it's a bit, I'm not so good at explaining things, I'm trying my best, but it's sort of like, you're just, on the left hand side you're distorting the points by one function, on the right hand side you're distorting the points by another function, and in between it's a blend of the two. And that's how I created this effect where it looks like the distortion is changing from left to right. On the left hand side it's distorting by this kind of like circular rippled effect, which is like various trigonometric functions like sine, cos, etc. On the right hand side, I don't even know, I think I was just messing around with loads of different things like parameters and stuff, until I got what I desired. Okay, so just to recap at this point, we've got the grid that we the framework for the grid, which is just a grid of points with horizontal and vertical lines. Those points get distorted by some function. And then we have the linear interpolation, which allows us to continuously deform from one object to another in like a linear fashion. Okay, so that's like our first kind of step one, step two. I think the next thing was worth talking about is how do we actually distort the points? So to distort the points, let's just take one point, okay, and say that it has coordinates x and y. We want to move this somehow. We want to move it, distort it in some way. And we want to distort it in a way that is dependent on the x and y value, so where the point is. In other words, each point will be distorted slightly differently depending on its location. So the way I do it is I have a function, a 2D function, we call it f of x, y. So it takes in two values, an x and a y value, and it will give us a new pair of x and y values. So it's going to equal some x, I don't know, let's call it x new and y new. And what we're doing to each of these points is moving the original point, x, y, to some new point, x new, y new. Okay. Okay, that's great, but then how do we actually decide what the new point is? And this is where, yeah, I basically just define a 2D function. So I'm defining a 2D function. So this is just kind of like me explaining what's happening. We're creating two new destination points. How do we actually like specifically define those destination points? Well, we have it will look something like this. So we have an x and y. The x value will be just x and y. So those are the original points that we started with here. Oh, sorry. So these x and y, x and y. But then we're going to add on some kind of anything we want. So maybe we add cos x plus y, and maybe for the y value we add sine x. And let me just say that these are the old values, x and y. So what I'm saying is, from this, the x new, i.e. the new x location, is going to equal x plus cos y, and then the y new is going to equal y plus sine x. Now the choice of the functions cos x plus y and sine x, I can't remember exactly which ones I used, but it was just I messed around loads with like loads of different functions until I got what I desired. But the point is, you can use anything. Okay, so I just want to now quickly visualize a little bit. I'm also, let me just kind of say, I'm actually finding this really difficult. I'm trying to explain this. I don't think I'm doing a good job, but I don't know. I'll just keep going, I guess. The way I want to kind of visualize it is, imagine our original grid of points, like a regular lattice, nothing interesting is happening. We can now distort every single point depending on its x and y value in a different sort of way. So this first one might end up going like here, then this one might end up going like here, you know, and they all kind of might do a certain thing. And then what I do is my code is going to join these all up to create some kind of interesting texture. Now I'm exaggerating the kind of thing to make my point, and that's how I create. I've lost the picture, but that original example I showed you is I'm distorting all of these points by some function, 2D function, by moving the x and y values accordingly. There is another way you could do it. You could also do it so that you move each point by a magnitude and an angle using like trigonometry, but I didn't do that. If that's something you'd like to hear about, I can talk about, but that's not what I did in this example. In this example, we're literally we're moving each point's x and y component individually. Okay, so we're almost done. The last thing is, now how do we... So just to summarize, we've got this grid of points. We're distorting each point by some 2D function evaluated at the x and y at that point. And then we're joining up all the points with vertical blue lines and horizontal red lines. The final kind of piece to this puzzle is, okay, well, how do we include that sort of linear interpolation from going from one function to another? Well, what we do is we start out by defining the two functions. So previously in this example, we have f of xy is equal to, for the x component, x plus cos xy, x plus cos x plus y, and then for the y component it's y plus sine x. What we want is two of these functions. It can be whatever you want, it doesn't matter, but just play around with what is interesting. But two functions. And I'm not going to write the whole function out again, but I'm just going to say the first function is f1 of xy, and then the second function is f2 of xy. xy. So what we're doing is we're distorting the points from the left-hand side with f1, and then on the right-hand side we're distorting the points with f2, and then we want to continuously deform how we're distorting the points from from one to the other. So this is where the linear interpolation comes in. Let me just kind of start talking about it. So what we want to do is say, for any point on the lattice in the grid, what's the function that we're using to distort it by? It's going to be some proportion of f of 1 and some proportion of f of 2. You can think of that slider which I talked about originally. Like, where are we on that slider? Well, how we decide where we are on the slider is quite simple. Is we take the length, or sorry, the width of the canvas, which I previously said was W, and then we take the x value of the point. So let's just say we're working at this point right here. This is x and y. We know that we are x from the left. So that tells us how far we are from 0 all the way to W. But now we need to scale it down to 0 to 1 to get our t value, like we described before. So to get t, we can say that t is just equal to x over W. And that will be some value between 0 and 1. Okay, so now we have the t value. Let me kind of do like a final colour. This is the pink. We've got the t value, we've got the two functions, and then we have the original, where is it? We have the linear interpolation formula. We can put it all together to get a new final function, call it like the master function, f of x, y, which is going to equal, if we look at the linear interpolation formula, a times 1 minus t, b times t, we know it's going to equal f of 1 xy times 1 minus t plus f of 2 f of 2 xy times t. But remember, t is just what we defined earlier as x over w, so the function f of xy is just equal to f1 of xy times 1 minus x over w plus f of 2 xy times x over w. So that's like the general formula for this. So you have one function on the left, f1, and one function on the right, f2, and then you're able to basically define any kind of continuous deformation from one to the other using this big F, and then you just use this to distort all of the points. Yeah, that's kind of it really. I'm going to kind of stop this section here because it's getting, we're on half an hour, bloody hell. Okay. I just want a quick couple points. So I'm going to show maybe some footage of the pen plot machine working in a second. But that's basically how I came up with this design. I just want to make a note, like a retrospective note. I found color grading it really difficult, so I just literally took a picture with my phone and then edited it in like a image editor, and I tried my best to color grade it, but that was really challenging. And just another final point as well, in the theme of like it's all to do with like metamorphosis, right? The person who prompted me was actually a really close friend of mine, and I showed him a couple examples of the art that I'd made when I was just drafting it, and I don't know how I did it, but somehow I created a version where the right hand side was like these like distorted butterfly. They look like butterfly wings, and I showed it to him, and the next day he came back and said, I don't know if you meant to do it, but they look like butterfly wings, right? And I have a really bad setup with like version controlling, so I didn't save it, and I kicked myself because it was so much better than the current design. But I tried my best to recreate it. So the idea is having like on the left hand side like quite sort of simple flowing designs, distortion, and then going to the right it's more complex, intricate, and it's supposed to kind of imply some like butterfly movement or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of like the design anyway. But yeah, I'll put some footage of the pen plot machine working in a second. But yeah, on to the final part, the touch designer now. Okay, so the final section now is the audio reactive visualizer. So what that means is it's a visual that changes and deforms and evolves depending on the sound of the song. So conceptually, like ideally, I want it to change based off of like the drum is probably like the percussion elements. So then it's like rhythmic. And yeah, I think it's worth saying as well. So the three parts: so the music, the pen plotting, and then the visualizer. The pen plotting is the part that I'm the most comfortable and most confident doing. Then I'd say it's the music, and then I'd say this is the final part that I find the most unintuitive. And I think it's probably because of this node-based software called Touch Designer. The node-based aspect is like really new to me. I have experience coding, but this is it's intuitive, but it's unintuitive to me because it's new. I think. But in all honesty, I think this is quite. I don't know if it's straightforward or whatever, but in terms of Touch Designer goes, I think it's fairly simple. But I heavily referenced two videos. So the first one is by a Touch Designer artist called Andrew Sun. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I'll link the work or the video I'm using in the video description. But this video was really useful because it kind of shows you how to approach using Touch Designer and set up your project or patch in a productive way. Some really great videos, and check out Andrew's Instagram. Absolutely amazing work. The other one I heavily referenced, and this one was more about the actual visual element, the Voronoi kind of texture, is this sort of like cellular effect, these like cells that evolve. That's the kind of texture I saw. I was just flicking through online with some various Touch Designer tutorials, and I came across this one, and I really like this texture, and I wanted to kind of recreate it. This is by Billiam. I apologize, I can't pronounce the surname. I'm fearful to attempt to try to, and I'm sure I'll butcher it, but they go under the name Electronaut. Really amazing tutorials. There's loads as well, and yeah, I found this one to be really easy to follow and creates a really striking visual with what feels like only a handful of nodes. I'm not really going to talk too much technically about this. I mean, I'd recommend following the tutorials. I kind of understand what's going on, but some of it is not. Yeah, it's not. I'm not super confident, but I'll talk about it kind of just quickly. So this section here, I'm just checking you can see the same thing as me. This section here basically works to take in the audio file, my song, and manipulates the frequencies and basically creates a signal which can be used to trigger or change the visual. And effectively we start out with a noise. I think if I press this button here, no, not this button, is it this one? Yeah, you can see on the right, it starts out with a noise, and it slowly, we add certain things. But effectively what's happening here, from what I understand, is a feedback loop. So we're taking the noise, I think we're applying the blur and the slope. This, by the way, is a really cool effect on the right. And then there's a gradient ramp as well. But there is a feedback here, which takes information from the end of the displacement and it loops through. I'll kind of be honest, I don't really understand necessarily how it works. I just followed the tutorial, but I understand that we're starting out with a noise function and we're distorting it in some way, with like this blur and the composite, which kind of feeds from the feedback, and it's going back after it's displaced there's this dotted line which is feeding back into the feedback, and I believe that is just kind of generating this really nice texture. But the thing I do know and can confidently say is so from this audio input, I'm feeding that into, I think, this blur parameter here, which changes if I just do it manually. It changes this pre-shrink, and it changes this filter size. And I think there was something else that gets changed. I think this, no, that doesn't get changed. Anything else? I think it was just that. So then, I just want to say as well, I'm conscious I'm not probably explaining it the best. This is my first attempt at trying to explain something, and hopefully the more times I do this, the better I'll be able to structure things. I don't think I want to spend much more time talking about this specific, how this Voronoi texture gets generated. But once I had this, I came up with two versions. So this one you're seeing here, and then there's a second version which you'll see in the track. And what I thought would be quite cool is every time the word change gets said in the song, to flip between the two. So I used DaVinci Resolve to edit those two together. And then the final touch was, I think at some point, just before the third breakdown, I flip it into a negative. I apply a negative filter, so everything is reversed, the colours that is, which I think is a really nice effect. And at the end, in the last phrase where there's like 2 bar segments, I flip the how the negative filter works, so we get different colours, and I think that's really quite powerful. Yeah, I don't really want to say much more on this because I'm already conscious this episode is really long. But all I can really say is follow those 2 tutorials, really good resources, and just experiment with the colours and gradients and all the parameters. I did create. I learned how to reference constants, so I can change constants up here, and then I can reference them using this code here. I think you're seeing okay. Or different, basically reference the output of different nodes using, I think this is like, I don't know if it's, I think it is Python, but you can literally write, code to reference different nodes, which is really powerful. So I was able to basically change these 2 parameters based off of some kind of, parameterized versions of the outputs of these audio nodes. But yeah, I think that's it for this kind of part. I'm gonna pause it here and just wrap it up in this episode now. Okay, so yeah, that's it. That's this episode done. I would probably say I didn't structure it the best. I tried my best, but I think it gets quite hard after a while trying to talk concisely about all these different things. So I hope I did some more right. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on Instagram. It's probably the best place to get in touch with me, or just comment below if you have any questions. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed doing this project, and I'm quite excited to do another or several more. I think I want to get quicker at doing this, because the part I enjoy the most is probably the music and the pen plotting, and I feel like doing all the other stuff like the editing and the promo and the making TikToks and things like that does take up a lot of time. I'm not complaining, but yeah, I think I need to kind of find a more systematic approach to delivering all of this. So this project from beginning to end I think took probably around 3.5 weeks, and yeah, and there's also you can't really rush some of the creativity. Like the music part, I wanted to spend as much time as it took. I don't want to necessarily rush it. I did give myself kind of a loose deadline, but I think the pen plotting was the easiest part for me. I think it was the quickest part for me to get done. But the audio visualizer and the music itself took probably the longest. But yeah, I'm excited. I've already got a prompt for my next one. And I think after that, I'll start reaching out to my following again on probably Instagram or TikTok for more prompts. So if you want to, get involved with this, please follow me on Instagram or TikTok, is where I'll be communicating this, when I'm requesting for more prompts in future. And just the sort of final kind of thing to say, I suppose, is if your prompt does get used, whether it's a painting or a pen plotting for the cover, I'll be sort of gifting away the cover art copy. So this one was a pen plot, so I'll be sending the prompter a pen plot for the cover. But yeah, thank you. I don't know if anybody has lasted this long. I'm guessing it's going to be over an hour, this video. But I really do appreciate all the support. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope to do more of this. But yeah, thank you.
Change.